Oh, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, guess I'm gonna eat someone. Oh, I better not finish that rhyme. You may know the song. Howdy everybody, Mr. Bob, your neighborhood naturalist, Bob Langston from the North Carolina Zoo, here to talk about some earthworms. Now, earthworms are one particular kind of worm that's found on the planet. There are an entire variety of them. Some are beneficial, some are not so beneficial. There are some that can live completely underwater in salt water. We're not talking about those. There are some that are parasites. They live on different animals and in different animals. We're not talking about those. We're talking about earthworms. Now, earthworms are segmented worms, and they're sometimes called oligochaetes if you want to speak about their scientific naming. So that means that they're a particular type and they do live in the soil. And there are three kinds. There's some that live on the top that are sometimes referred to as epigeic. There are some that live just below the surface that are called endogeic. And there's some that are actually found much deeper in the soil. Now, earthworms, generally speaking, don't eat dirt. They're eating small animals, including little protozoans and other smaller worms that live in the soil. They do a couple of things. They add texture to the soil. Here in Randolph County, we have a lot of clay, which is a mineral soil. It has fine particles and it packs down. There's not a lot of air in it. There needs to be some air in the soil for plants and for the organisms that help feed them as well. But earthworms also help fix nitrogen. Now that means that nitrogen and other nutrients in the soil are not always equal. We need nitrogen, we need phosphorus, we need potassium, but they have to be in various chemical compounds that plants can take up. Some of the chemical compounds can actually become toxic. Too much nitrogen and the wrong type of compound can be fatal for earthworms. Earthworms make the soil healthier, and in turn, the soil actually grows plants that put back nutrients that earthworms can eat, and a lot of that is plant matter. What I have here is 2 buckets. By the way, I have to say this, the only way that you can really look for earthworms is to get your hands dirty. Dirt is actually a really good thing, and this is nice dark colored. It's mixed. There is some clay in here. Some clay that is the standard old red clay, but it's been mixed up with a lot of different organic materials, so it's much, much better. The earthworms are eating that, and when they poop it out, it's called a casting. It has a nitrogen that's really good for plants. Plants will grow, they'll shed their leaves, that provides food for earthworms. Earthworms fix the nitrogen and make air in the soil. That's a really good thing. Now I'm going to dump this out, and we'll see who's hiding out in this big old tub of dirt. I may not even get it all out. Let's see. We're going to wallow around, see if we've got anybody. It rained a couple of days ago, so this stuff is kind of damp. And hopefully they do need some water. But see, earthworms don't have lungs. They have to breathe through their skin. And they breathe through their skin so that when they land in the water, they wiggle a lot. That means they're trying to find some air. And I'm just going to dig around here a little bit. Don't see an awful lot there. We're going to add a little bit more dirt to the table and see what we get. And again, this is we call this soil actually because it's a mixture of mineral dirt as well as a lot of organic material. And I look in these flower pots because there are some cool things in here. Now, I'm going to mention this. Playing in the dirt is good and it's important. There are 2 people at the zoo, Miss Linda Kenny and Miss Kathy Osborne, that are really, really big about having young people play in the dirt. It's good stuff. It does great things for us. I'm going to get... Oh, this one's really wet. I may not find anything in here. Ah, there's one. So we do end up with some of these earthworms. The native ones are probably not huge. The native ones are much, much smaller. They're digging around in the earth and they're aerating and doing other things like that. The largest ones that are not native are often your night crawlers or your red wigglers. There was a great television show back in the 70s, and it was set in a radio station, and one of their prime sponsors grew fishing worms for as his business, and it was Red Wigglers. Had this great song, Red Wigglers, the Cadillac of worms. I'm probably going to get in trouble for singing that. But this is what they do. They crawl around in the soil, and I'm finding sow bugs. Some of you guys know these as pill bugs. That they're just called sow bugs. Roly-polies sometimes get the other name. They're also doing some fun things. You usually find those underneath a bunch of this stuff. Ooh, there's a big one. Now there's one of these worms right here. There is an entire field of composting called vermicomposting, worm composting. And basically you can start a bin of these. You can get the castings in the soil and use it for fertilizer. There's water that seeps to the bottom and it's dark brown and it's called worm tea. It has the castings in it. And that's one of the things that makes your soil a lot healthier. Now they are called segmented worms, and if you look at them, they do look like they have little sections and segments. They're not going to hurt you. Anybody who's ever been fishing down along the coast, there's a type of segmented worm we use for bait quite a lot called a bloodworm. Those are some of those saltwater worms. They have 4 big teeth and they can bite you. And these don't. Now what they eat, they can eat plant matter. They can also eat other smaller worms. There are some that are living in the soil that are much smaller than these guys, and they will eat those. Who eats them? What's that old adage we know? The early bird gets the worm. So there are birds that dig these up. When it rains, I have a yard full of robins and other birds because the rain gets into the soil, and as I said, they have to breathe through their skin, so when they're underwater, they come up to the surface. And in this particular case, they're coming up to the surface to get air, and the birds know that, so that's when they come looking for them. The problem happens, though, is when people want to take care of their yards by putting on too much fertilizer. They put on too much of the nitrogen fertilizer and your soil will become acid, and that's not healthy for earthworms. The other problem that happens is when people put in tons and tons of pesticides. I say tons, probably no one person puts in a ton. There's a small one, and again, I don't know enough to be able to tell you the difference between the different varieties, but these are just some of the earthworms that can be found right here in my yard, and I encourage people to get out and take a look at them. Root around. There's another larger one right there. And again, they're just crawling around. These are some flower pots I had stuff growing in before, and I repotted the plants. The dirt's there, and a lot of times, because it's really good organic soil, the earthworms will come up through the weep holes in the bottom to get into the soil. So earthworms, very beneficial. They help us aerate the soil. They fix different nutrients so that it's accessible by plants, which makes the soil a lot more fertile and a lot healthier. Earthworms. Get out with your bare hands, play in the dirt, dig in the dirt, and see what you can find. I'd like to thank everybody for letting me join you for just a few minutes today. Hope we have an opportunity to do some more of these before too much longer. The summer is rolling on along. The zoo is open. I will mention that because you do need to make reservations and you do need to purchase your tickets in advance. You can do that and find out all the information you need by visiting the North Carolina Zoo website at www.nczoo.org. So please, plan your visits, plan ahead, and plan on wearing a face covering when you're there. I'm here in my yard, so I'm not wearing one right now. Earthworms are great things. I'll introduce you to some more stuff that's found out here in the natural world in future episodes of the Neighborhood Naturalist. But for the North Carolina Zoo, I'm Mr. Bob. Get your hands dirty, and we'll see you next time. Take care.